Cultivated Marketer, episode 49. Why comfort, joy, and meaning matter more. What if the future of marketing isn't more personalization, more AI, more tech, but understanding the deeper human needs that actually drive behavior? Hear from our guest on research and methodology that map comfort, joy, and meaning to our basic needs. All right, team, we have the opportunity to talk about comfort, joy, and meaning with representative from a local firm, Signal Theory, and Samantha Scantlebury. I kind of personally geeked out around this one. I'm not going to go too in depth, but somebody that actually had a psych minor, not that we had minors at KU really, but I took way too many hours in psychology. I wanted to become a practitioner. My mom talked me out of that. Maybe I've got mom issues. That's where we'll leave this. But we were talking about the alignment between comfort, joy, and meaning in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I really kind of did geek out about that. That was pretty cool.
I feel like we should clarify this is not a Christmas episode. You hear comfort, joy, and you're thinking this is not a Christmas themed episode.
Cue the music.
Christmas in July. Here it comes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're kind of taking a lighthearted approach, but when you dig into this, and I looked at it again, I mean, there's some really, really cool conclusions in this research. I'm so glad we're focusing it. I talk about some of it. We all do as we go through, so I won't spoil it here. I love it when large agencies try to do something kind of more for the greater good. Does that make sense? I mean, they've got this huge power behind them, whether it be research teams, et cetera. And it's nice to see them do kind of non-branded work that really can help all and get all of us to think maybe at a deeper level as marketers. So kudos to Signal Theory and certainly Sam and her colleague, Jen Nigro, who we've known for a long time and is a terrific marketer here in Kansas City herself. And I just really, really glad to see their agency take that kind of stand. And how many times do we quote, Brent, I know in the 49 episodes we've done, right? Things like the Edelman Trust Barometer and Fleischman-Hillard's research.
The authenticity gap. I was thinking about Fleischman-Hillard's authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, when these agencies, I think this is great work. It's not like it's not without cost to them, but I do, and in their case, boy, they really have kept it non-brand. I mean, they're a great agency. They do great work for all kinds of brands, but that's not really what they're about here. They're about giving back, and I just think it was really well done.
As the person representing the nonprofit space, of course, you guys can assume that I love this. So I actually, my notebook, I didn't have my notebook. So here's my little sticky note. I was trying to write down quotes. It was so good. And I think in the nonprofit space, we're constantly wanting to communicate with this human-centric mentality. But to see her talking about how they're helping brands do that was so, so good. But especially, and I know I talk about this a lot, but in this current cultural moment, and when I say current, it feels like it's a really long current cultural moment. It's been a very long current cultural moment, but I'm so passionate about brands and nonprofits and organizations who are trying to bridge people together, helping people who have differing beliefs talk together. And I just feel like she nails it by helping brands and marketers understand, here's how you communicate with a human. You remember that they're human. So it was phenomenal. I can't wait for people to listen to this.
Yeah, to me, this felt like I'm going to echo Julie sentiments and then maybe add on a little bit in the sense that we did take a lighthearted approach in our initial discussion of this. I'm going to still pile onto that. This felt like the Ted Lasso episode that we needed at this moment.
I love that reference.
Because we talk a lot as marketers around ethos, pathos, and logos, and we give this notion that emotion sells. But you heard me talk about oftentimes in this moment, there's a lot of fear mongering that's going on as part of the sell, as part of the convert. So for us to have the Ted Lasso comfort, joy, and meaning component of that and give a thoughtful framework about how we can use that in instruction. And again, to your point, Matt, it's a gift they're giving to marketers and communicators in saying, not only should you be thinking about emotion to convey your message, but here, let's give you a framework and some thought around brands that are doing it well around these concepts of comfort, joy, and meaning, and what people want when they're thinking about their safety and security, when they're thinking about human connectedness, when they're thinking about self-actualization, right? You're actually giving people some more meat than saying, factor emotion into your communication, factor emotion into your marketing. It's a beautiful framework that they provided, and she's expanded upon in our discussion in what we'll share in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, not every agency can do that, right? Some of us are just too small to have that kind of a reach or a backbone. If you've got those resources and you can bring them to bear, why not? You got to believe that if they were in a competitive pitch with another agency of their size and they're able to say, but hey, look what we're doing and look how we're kind of grounded in research. I mean, I would think that's probably a real competitive advantage for them. And there's terrific agencies out there. I'm not just saying they're the only one, but I just think it's a super smart business move on their part to take this kind of approach and investment spend sort of in this manner. And you'd like to see, again, the Signal Theories, the Edelmans, people like that of the world kind of take that significant step.
Yep. Fabulous gift they've given to all of us. And we're standing in the way of that gift, folks. So we're no longer going to stand in the way of giving you our conversation with Samantha Scantlebury. Take care, everybody. Welcome to Cultivated Marketer, where we talk marketing professional development so your garden of opportunity grows. This is Brent Bowen.
I'm Matt Tidwell.
And I'm Julie Masson.
And our guest today is a senior director of brand strategy at Signal Theory. She is a passionate strategist and brand builder with extensive experience across B2B and B2C sectors. So very instructive today. That'll be super helpful. And speaking of being helpful, she's helped major brands like John Deere, Michelin, Merck Animal Health, and Borden Cheese build awareness, strengthen customer relationships, and drive measurable business growth. As a champion for human-centric strategy, she applies behavioral science principles to marketing communications, helping brands create deeper emotional connections by understanding audiences through the lenses of comfort, joy, and meaning. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about some research that's connected to this during the interview today. It'll be awesome. Her work focuses on uncovering strategic leverage points that shape behavior, influence loyalty, and move marketing beyond surface level personalization into something far more, and I love this word these days, far more human. Samantha Scantlebury, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me.
Man, what a gift it has been to be a host of this show. Brett and Matt, they twisted my arm and they brought me on, and I get to interview people like you, Sam. And one of my favorite things that I get to ask is, how did you get started in this field? I love being able to hear all the different stories of how people got started in marketing communications. So let's start at the beginning. What originally drew you into brand work, and what were some of your early experiences that shaped that perspective?
All right. Well, I'm one of those rare and kind of boring people that I'm actually working exactly in the position that I went to school for, or I got my degree in. I studied journalism at the University of Missouri with an emphasis in strategic communications, and had the opportunity while I was there to serve more in the brand strategy role, definitely in my capstone courses, et cetera. I started to really realize that I had a lot of the left brain, right brain thing going. I loved calculus. I loved getting into data, but I also loved art and I loved expression. And when I got into strategy, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm bringing two things that work in my head together and kind of bringing this art and science together, which I would argue is advertising and marketing as a whole, but definitely in strategy and thinking about customer and customer insights. You're really trying to craft that story from both intuition and empathy, but also supplement that with good, hard data points and facts and figures that can give you a solid foundation from which to build. I will say that one interesting thing too that really solidified, and it was kind of an interesting way that solidified, yeah, I know I'm on the right path because you get to do stuff like this. When I was in school, I had the opportunity to work at a laboratory within the journalism school. And I was an assistant. I was a lab assistant, and I got to hook people up to sensors on their face and their foreheads and near their eyes, and then on their hands and on their wrists. And I got to make them then read or watch news media and advertisements. And we measured their facial expressions, their skin conductance, their heart rate. They took surveys along with that research too about what they thought about the information that they were consuming at that time. So it was very interesting to just kind of see wow, there's so much depth here. There's so much depth in marketing. It's not just a point, click, go buy. It is really not only talking about emotional levers, but even physiological elements that are involved in branding and advertising. So that was really where I got my start. And I was fortunate to be able to get into some really good advertising agencies early in my career and just built my strategy background and career from there.
That is fascinating. And I think you're so right about art and math. These are not the words you use. These are my lower level paraphrase, but art and math really do go together in marketing and advertising. So that's amazing. I have to ask, what year were you doing all of this where you're attaching little things to people's heads? Because I'm wondering what that would look like today in 2026.
Oh, I think it would probably look very different. I think about just like the way that technologies have improved so much since that time. That was around 2005, 2006, and my freshman and sophomore year of school. So
very different political climate back then as well. So which has affected all of the ways we market and communicate with people. So that's fascinating.
yes, it was very interesting. And it was cool to just see how, you could see those physiological spikes at certain points as people are consuming certain types of media and certain types of messages. So I learned a lot through that experience.
So that's great. Well, hey, Sam, we're so glad to have you on the show. I followed your agency for a long time. I just love it. I respect it so much. It does such important work in the Midwest and really throughout the country. And I'm so excited to hear more about it today. And by the way, special shout out and thanks, right, to our fellow marketing communicator, Jen Nigro,
Yes.
who helped put us in touch with you there at Signal Theory. And Jen's terrific. Brand new member of my advisory board for our undergraduate PR and marketing group. But anyway, just great to have you on. You and I have just barely met, but I've already learned something about you that makes you extremely unique as a communicator, and that is that you like math. So that is very
unique.
rare. As somebody who can barely balance his checkbook and whose students absolutely, recoil at any plus sign or equal sign, they probably shouldn't, but they do. To hear that you're somebody who actually doesn't mind that, in fact, kind of likes it, is really unique. So kudos to you. But I do have a question in all of that. Let's get into this issue of consumer behavior. I know we're going to talk a lot about that today. It's one of those things everybody talks about consumer behavior because, it's all learn your customer, know about your customer. We hear that till we're blue in the face. We're taught that, but very few people truly understand it at a much deeper level. And I know you all really look at that intently. What is it about the psychology behind why people connect with certain brands that inspires you?
I'm going to kind of step back a little bit and talk about a project that was a little bit of a passion project that we did this past year. And the strategy team at Signal Theory, we interviewed each week a different person of all different walks of life, different ages, ethnicities, careers, etc. And it was probably one of the coolest and most rewarding things I've ever done because it really brought it back to just the fact that everyone is so incredibly human and authentic. There's different ways that brands can enter into their lives through those emotional openings. I really think that's really what draws me to branding work, anything related to behavioral science, is that the human is at the center of it. And humans are really complex and nuanced and just fascinating beings. So just that project of getting to talk to 52 people and kind of getting into why they've made the decisions in their life that they have, what brings them happiness, what are the types of things that are bringing a lot of value to their lives. That to me just really is what BSci is all about. It's about understanding the human beings at a deeper level in order to be able to be a brand in the right place and the right time to fulfill that need for them.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about uniqueness, right? It's amazing that you were able to endeavor into this activity where you're able to speak to a new individual every week. That's amazing. And there's an element of uniqueness. And you've led strategy across both B2C, B2B, and I want to flip the coin on you a little bit because you've talked to very different audiences. What are maybe some commonalities that you've seen across human behavior, regardless of industry, regardless of business segment, maybe even regardless of background, personal human background? What are some commonalities you've seen in all this?
Well, I don't mean to oversimplify it, and we've already started to kind of talk to this theme, but the biggest and most important truth about human behavior, no matter if you're talking B2C or B2B, is this, that humans make decisions emotionally and justify them rationally. There is an enormous body of work to support that we are just emotional beings. And while we think that we're incredibly logical, and how we make decisions and go about our days. Our system 1 thinking, which is fast and intuitive, it's more rooted in emotions and impulse, versus system 2, which is more slow and deliberate and methodical and analytical. And when I say system 1, system 2, I'm speaking to, some of you might have heard of Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winning behavioral economist and wrote a great book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great book. It's a thick book. It's a lot to get through. You always have to remember that. And I think sometimes we lose this a bit in B2B. And I've spent a lot of my career on B2B brands, and it's easy to fall into the pattern of functional, rational selling, because often in B2B, things are a little bit more technical. I've had to sell certain vaccines to swine producers. And you're probably wondering, how on earth do I make that interesting? Do I make it emotional? But you can, because these B2B buyers, whomever they are, they do want to feel emotions like confidence and ease or pride in their decision making, or maybe even excitement. Hey, this new opportunity could be opened up for me. At Signal Theory, we work on B2C and B2B brands, and we really always just remind ourselves that we're talking to a human being. And so often in marketing, sometimes we just ask, okay, what's the business problem do we have to solve? But the first thing we ask ourselves after that is, okay, what's the human problem behind the business problem that we have to solve? What's the emotional need? What's the emotional longing? And we have to have that focus, no matter if you're talking to a B2B or B2C audience.
Yeah, the ethos, logos, pathos, right? The emotional part of that is the part that's the most important. Although what's interesting about that, a couple of years back, I had the opportunity to collaborate with and I know we're going to speak to the flip side of this in a minute. I had the opportunity to collaborate with a German marketing firm, and they pushed on the emotional side fear for everything. It was like fear, 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 fear. It was like, that's what's going to sell and convert. So we're going to go fear. And I went, ooh, that's not our disposition generally to work from there. It was very eye-opening to see how people think about emotion, right? No matter the industry.
Absolutely. It's like you have a responsibility as a marketer to really think about, am I doing business and marketing ethically and correctly and handling those emotions, trying not to exploit or, yes, Julie's applauding me. All right. But I think, I think
all the applause.
Yeah. But I think it's important that we have to be careful of some of those fear tactics.
Yeah. I want to switch gears maybe just a little bit, maybe a little bit offshoot of the subject line we've just been talking through. And that is today, however, we're seeing so many marketers, so many organizations really work more toward automating things to almost like a more of a one size fits all kind of approach. And yet your work, and certainly grounded in terrific research, showing that people are actually craving something more emotional, more human, maybe more personalized to them. Is that shift apparent to you all? And maybe when did that become clear to you?
Yeah, it evolved from our repositioning at Signal Theory. When we rebranded to Signal Theory, we were formerly called Sullivan, Higdon, and Sink. It was kind of really interesting timing to rebrand to Signal Theory with this emphasis on behavioral science and this philosophy based on, an understanding that behavioral science can drive marketing effectiveness. And the reason that it was so well timed is that it happened at a point of great technological innovation. Every day we were waking up, this was around 2019, 2020. Every day we were waking up and there's another social media platform. There was the metaverse was kind of starting to become a thing. We were starting to kind of understand and hear more about this AI thing that was in the wings at that time. And tech was really just like this shiny object. And there were a lot of agencies at that time and continue to be willing to kind of chase those things and kind of become specialists in certain technologies. This is not to dog on anyone for making those business decisions. In fact, at Signal Theory, we use AI tools available to us in our work. What we started to realize and what I really took to heart was that as much as things change, and even the more tech forward and automated that marketing becomes, the human being and how we make decisions stays the same. We kind of have cavemen, cavewomen brains. Our limbic system is driving our decision making. And that's why, despite all these great technological advances, which there are great technological advances, people are still saying, I want to feel emotionally connected, because that's how we've always been. That's what drives us and a lot of our decisions. Our brains are hardwired for that emotional connection. And it helps us understand our world, our place in it, and how to navigate it. So yes, technologies can bring a lot of efficiencies, but people today are craving something emotional and human. And it's important, I think, to find the balance, right? Leverage technologies in a way that can help the business operate at a higher level, but also never forget that you're talking to a human being that makes decisions a very set way.
Yeah. And boy, isn't that true when we look at generational research, right? I mean, a lot of us are fans of the research on Gen Z, and you talk about a generation that wants for things to be more emotional, more human, and certainly authentic. That certainly, I think, would ring true for them. So that's great. Thank you.
Which brings me to the next question that we have. And I'm so glad we're addressing this, the humanity of everything, as well as, the flip side. I was giving the example of not leading pathos into fear, right? Signal theories research. You've done a lot of research around comfort, joy, and meaning. And it feels so relevant right now, just based on the remarks you were giving to Matt around everything feels so distant and inhuman. A lot of the technology revolution that's taking place, even though that's where I execute and generally execute well, I still very much am a human being and enjoy that human connectedness. But it's so relevant right now. As you all have dug into your findings and conducted this research, what insights challenge your own assumptions around humanity, and that we're not all just responding to fear, and that we are going to respond to comfort, to joy, to things that bring us together and maybe not divide us?
You're so right. We are at a point where those emotions just feel particularly important. And I think a lot of people have that sort of attachment to the idea of comfort, joy, and meaning. Just as a little bit of context, our comfort, joy, and meaning framework is a piece of research that launched late last year officially, but it's been something that at Signal Theory we were talking about and thinking about for a number of years. And it's actually grounded in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've all taken a course in high school or college and know about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. What we think about is that those levels of physiological needs to safety and comfort, to love and belonging, to self-esteem, to self-actualization, those are the needs. There's kind of an accompanying layer of wants that go along with that. And those wants, those feelings, are comfort, joy, and meaning. Comfort kind of lives in that I want to feel, my physiological needs are satisfied and I feel safe and I feel comfort. Joy really attaches itself to that love and belonging and a little bit of that esteem. And then meaning, of course, ties so closely with that self-actualization. That's where we started to say, like, man, at the end of the day, that's really what brands are selling. If we're really selling based on people's emotions, that's really what people are looking for. They want to feel comfort. They want to feel joy. They want to feel meaning. And I kind of challenge you to think about pretty much anything out there, a car, some food, a brand of food, something you might wear, an article of clothing or brand of clothing. How does that deliver on comfort, joy, and meaning to you? And some will deliver across all three really strongly, and some may really be more attached to one or the other. We didn't really know where this research was going to go, if I'm being honest. We kind of wanted to try to prove out this assumption and just kind of make sure that we weren't just talking to ourselves and like, wow, this sounds really neat. Sure makes a lot of sense in our minds, but
yeah, this alignment's really cool. I love this want-need alignment. This is really cool.
Exactly. We wanted to make sure that it felt real. So what we did is we did this methodology where we broke out comfort and joy and meaning into different facets. There are 18 different facets that we measured, 6 per, and we ran people through it and ran brands through it, had people respond to certain brands and how they delivered on comfort and on joy and on meaning and those different facets of it. And what we saw, what was interesting, what this did validate was that more brands scored better on those measures of comfort than they did on those measures of joy, than they did on those measures of meaning. It kind of formed the pyramid and did reflect that hierarchy. And we also learned too that there were some positive correlations between those comfort and joy and meaning scores and business outcomes. So what we saw were that brands that were scoring well on comfort were correlated to high scores in likelihood to repurchase. Brands that scored high on joy were correlated with high scores on likelihood to have word of mouth activity. And then brands that scored really high in meaning also had high scores in brand advocacy. We can't say 1-to-1, like this is completely causational. That's not what this is claiming, but the correlations were strong enough for us to say, okay, these are some levers that we can pull here to help us work towards some business outcomes for brands. So that was really cool to see. A couple other quick things too was that when we did this research, we kind of wanted to see what people were feeling about advertising and marketing currently, and if they were feeling emotionally connected to the types of messages they were receiving. And this is where we got a little bit of shock factor. And we were like, oh my gosh, there is a problem. What we learned was that 88% of people know that they're seeing ads from the same brands across different media. They're picking up. They're like, hey, I see you. I see you. You're following me. You're following me online. I see you. But 24% of them were saying that ads actually reflected their lifestyle. People who say that they saw about 50 or so ads a day, which I actually think is quite low, but it's also a moderate amount of ads a day. 78% of those were saying, oh my gosh, we're overwhelmed. Too many messages, too much volume. One other statistic. So only 19% feel that brands really understand them. But then the survey went on to validate that people want to resonate with a brand. People want to connect with brands. So what we took away from this research was, oh man, we're kind of creating a problem. There's a lot of technology that allows us to put a large amount of messaging and advertising into the world and in front of people and target people really well, which in many senses is great, but we're kind of missing the mark. And are we really hitting on some of those emotional levers? Can comfort and joy and meaning be a way to more meaningfully connect with people and build that resonance that they say that they want? That was some of the surprising stuff that we learned, was just that, oh my gosh, there's work to be done. And we think that utilizing those emotional levers might be a way to help make marketing more effective and also more meaningful to people.
Yeah, I was flipping through the research again, Sam, and boy, that was the money slide that stood out to me. I think it's maybe slide 19 or so in the deck. I'm not sure, but the takeaway is clear. The technology to target people has far outpaced the ability to create content that connects at a human level. So to your point, we're getting so good at targeting and retargeting, and all of us understand that, right? We all see our feeds, but yet 35%, more than a third, report that marketing rarely or never reflects their specific interest, even though they're getting targeted 9 different ways from Sunday. I just thought that was fascinating and really kind of the money shot out of this research. To your point, throughout every era of marketing, right? We can be tool crazy, but if we're not hitting the mark from a human perspective, we got a long way to go. And I just thought that was fascinating in your research.
Absolutely.
I was going to remark, this should be obvious at this point for our listeners, because there's so much to take away from the research that we're going to be including a link to the research in the show notes. And then obviously Sam and others at Signal Theory would love for you to reach out and probably talk to them within the slice of comfort, joy, and meaning that you would like to talk to them about with respect to the research. So we will include that link in the show notes for everybody's benefit.
Okay, I'm going to switch this question I had prepped. I'm inspired by what you said, Sam, about just this amazing emphasis on being human-centric. So if marketers are constantly being pressured to chase clicks, conversions, and short-term wins, I want you to think about that human that's sitting in the marketer seat. What would you tell that person who is feeling the pressure from their leadership to chase clicks, conversions, and wins? What would you tell them? How can they advocate to their bosses to have more of this human-centric marketing strategy?
Yeah, we get it. I get it. It is a world in which, we want to see results and we want to see them now. And short-term results are important to the sustainability and viability of a long-term business. It is a balancing act, but you can't just forget the emotional side and the loyalty and advocacy side of things. You want to get your brand message right. You want to diagnose the right amount of emotion that people may be lacking or longing for, like comfort and joy and meaning, that your brand can then deliver and show up delivering. And then, of course, you just want to make sure that you show up in a way that is just consistent. again and again in order to build trust. And so a lot of times we kind of ask ourselves, what are people, going back to the human? Yes, there may be like a short-term need from your brand, but when you're really brand building, and brand building is what sustains an organization for a lot longer than just today's sales, you need to really get in the mindset of what is that person lacking or longing for? What is their human problem? What is the brand or the category not delivering them? I would then dial up maybe some emotions related to joy here or some emotions related to meaning. And so I think it's just one of those things where the pressure is always going to be there for that short-term transaction, but really the goal of branding is to create that long-term relationship. And that long-term relationship goes from deeply understanding the human, where their needs are, where their longing is, and then finding the ways to strategically insert yourself into their lives in a way that brings value, whether that be through comfort, joy, or meaning. So sometimes too, it's like the business objective and the emotional need may line up. For instance, if you're seeing that your loyalty program is suffering, it is probably true that if surveyed, people are probably not feeling meaningfully connected to your brand values and what you stand for. It doesn't have to be just the squishy, oh, we have to hit on emotions over here. Those can be very much connected to some deficiencies or needs for optimization and business performance as well.
That's great. And I would say whenever I'm working with nonprofit communicators who are often working for bosses who are feeling their own pressure from boards and donors to deliver, I always encourage those comms and marketing leaders to know their boss. So know that human, always understand who the human is that you are working for so that you can say, how can I help them? What's their fear? How can I help them feel less afraid by showing them this strategy? If we were to shift here, would help meet this specific objective, da, 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 da. So I cannot tell you how much I love this emphasis on the human-centric focus, because I feel like we've gotten so far away from that in many ways. And we just need more of you in the world, Sam, is what I'm trying to say. More of you.
Well, I don't know if I want to unleash that to the world, but I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, I think you got a good handle on it. And I wish this was a video show, because what people missed was your flight of flutter hands of the metaverse too, because I wanted that. We need more of that in the show. So when we do our picture later with Julie, we need to get a fly to the metaverse hands there.
We can make that happen.
In the picture with Julie. So I think unleashing you in the world would be awesome. So there you go.
For sure. For sure. Hey, I guess we can't have a marketing podcast without saying the dreaded AI word. We've already touched on it a little bit, right? So I want to ask you a question about just how AI is transforming. Obviously, it's transforming communications and marketing and it's powering things in so many ways. But consumers, we know, are starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed by kind of this manufactured personality. Did everybody see the videos from some of the graduation commencement speeches where Gen Z in the audience is booing the commencement speakers off the stage when they start saying the dreaded AI word? So again, generation, right? So there is this feeling, this undercurrent of we're getting, again, sort of AI'd to death by so many of our audiences. So I guess the question is, I assume you do think authenticity certainly fits into the future of marketing. And is that going to be kind of the killer app to help get past some of this AI fatigue that we seem to be having out there now?
Yeah, I know I sound like a broken record. If anyone takes anything out of this conversation, it's just important that brands be human and recognize that you're talking to humans. You can pull those comfort, joy, meaning levers to do that. And you're right, Matt, there is a lot of research and dialogue about people feeling overwhelmed, threatened even by the pace of technological advancement and changes. And that's, yes, I even was thinking to myself today, man, those boos at commencement speeches have been really notable. People just really also want to go and touch grass a little bit right now,
Right.
And so I think there's really an opportunity for brands to meet them at where they are and really meet them in this moment where we are culturally, technologically, with something that feels real. Yes, a brand isn't necessarily a human, but it is comprised of humans. And there are very human ways that a brand can show up and add value to an individual's life. So it's just really thinking about that, almost imagining your brand as though it is a human being and being like, what would it do to help this person over here? I also want to just say AI is a part of our world, though. And what we really ascribe to at Signal Theory is that we use AI to help create space so we can generate those emotionally based and human first types of creative work, AI can be an incredible tool for efficiency, for building testing ideas, kind of riffing off, like kind of expanding. There's a lot there. There's a lot to be learned through that use, but we can't forget to then apply the human lens. We can sense when something doesn't feel authentic or real. And at the end of the day, I really believe that the most creative and impactful work are going to come from places of deep empathy and human curiosity. And I will tell you, I have a counterpart here at our organization who is our innovation and technology director, and he is phenomenal. And he's an authority on AI and marketing. And we really believe in the power of his role, but he's going to be the first to say, hey, it is a tool. And ultimately, that creativity, that impact is coming from a human-centered place, and that empathy and curiosity that humans can bring into a situation, be it marketing or otherwise. So we really believe that at the firm, and I believe that personally, and that's how I go about my life.
Well said. Thank you.
Yep. Otherwise, just derivative works without our human invention, which brings us to perhaps the most human portion of the program. So we've started a newish segment here called 4 Quick Questions, and each of us will pepper you with a question, and who knows where this will go. But I've got the first one here. It's your marketing fuel. Folks who aren't able to watch this saw a can of Diet Coke pop up, and this may be your marketing fuel. But if you had marketing fuel, you got to choose. Is a coffee/beverage of choice, music, or chaos? What's your marketing fuel, Sam?
Oh, my fuel is definitely Diet Coke, no doubt. And there's actually a running joke at the organization that I am Diet Coke's #1 fan and will probably be on my tombstone in some way, shape, or form. So that's my fuel. I will say, though, I think some of the more interesting brands are those that are a little unhinged. And we talk about advertising and marketing at the end of the day being entertaining. And that's how it's kind of engaging with people. So there's a little bit of chaos in marketing that keeps me going too, because I'm just like, what's going to happen next? Who's going to come up with something next?
Diet Coke with a sidecar of tequila for Sam.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm hearing too.
I feel seen.
Okay. Is there a consumer trend that you can't stop watching?
I was thinking about this, but it very much aligns with everything that we've been talking about. And one of the final questions, Matt, that you asked, like something that I'm getting served in my feeds a lot right now in terms of a consumer trend is analog hobbies and things like, have you heard of analog bags where people are packing purses full of like knitting equipment and
analog bags?
Yeah. Cross stitches. Oh, I'm going to pull out my Sudoku book, and then there's dumb phones and there's grandma hobbies and there's these tech-free social events and people are getting into old cameras and vinyl. Of course, vinyl's been around doing its thing for a while now, but I'm fascinated by it. One, because it just keeps kind of showing up. So maybe there's something about me in that, but it indicates just really this point of tension that we're at. And I think that's something that we're going to have to watch. And again, I'm not anti-technology, but it is interesting to just see how people are navigating that tension. And also, I think that my algorithm has figured out that I'm turning 40 this year. And in a couple months,
it gets you.
It does. It's caught up. And so there's a lot of like millennial content that's being hit right at me that are asking like, what are your hobbies, millennial? Is it bird watching, gardening, sourdough?
Running.
Yes, running, sourdough starter, talking about protein and fiber a lot. And I'm like, yes, all of the above. All of the above.
That's great. Love that turning to analog since we just talked about tech fatigue, right? Sam, what's an underrated brand right now that you are following or just kind of interested in?
I think there's two that kind of come to mind. One is underrated. I didn't realize actually how underrated it was until I read something recently. Have you all ever heard of Vuori? It's like Vuori clothing, athleisure clothing, incredibly soft. And I just learned the other day that they only have about 9% of brand awareness in the United States. And I would have thought they had a lot more. But the thing about it is, it might only be 9% that are aware, but of those 9%, over 50% of them have bought from Vuori. They are aware and they have bought. I mean, that's big. That is a lot of money. And they just show up super consistently. They definitely have mastered their vibe and how they show up and who they show up for. And I love their product personally, but I really appreciate how they've kind of carved a niche. I'm interested to see where they go from here because I don't know if they would go mass market because I don't know that their premium positioning would allow them to do so. So that's one. And then it's not an underrated brand, but it's an understated brand. There's a skincare brand called The Ordinary, and they have all sorts of different, facial serums and wrinkle stuff and all, I'm turning 40. So that's what I care about now. But I also think the teens are into it, and definitely Gen Z. They've talked to me about The Ordinary. They have a very interesting marketing approach, very understated, very text heavy, no glamorous fashion shoots. It's all about just getting you the facts and showing that it's science backed and it's straightforward. And there's something kind of beautiful about their approach and its simplicity.
Okay, last question. What's one word every brand should strive for?
Humanity. It's got to be humanity. I know, again, it's broken record, but I feel like that's what we need to be thinking about today.
If that weren't the response, I might have questioned you based on the course of the conversation today. I think we might all.
I almost answered it for you, but.
Yeah, Sam, let's dial this back to the rewind and the notion of analog. Let's rewind this all the way back to the beginning. So we've had a great time chatting with you just about humanity. It scratched the itch of somebody who was a psych minor here to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs here. Anything else you'd like to mention that we may have missed? We're definitely going to include a link to the research in the show notes. This has been a fabulous time. Anything else you might like to mention?
One additional piece about the comfort, joy, and meaning framework, we're constantly examining that research and expanding upon it. And one thing that we're working on doing is kind of getting more of a longitudinal look or a look over time at different brands and how their scores are changing and how those might be correlated with business outcomes as well. Because we know as marketers, you can't just be talking over here about feelings and then be like, okay, but what does that mean for my brand? And what does that mean for business? And we know implicitly that there are connections. And we talked about that and how that emotional connection is so important for that long-term brand building, advocacy, et cetera. But it is also important for us to not just talk about these things as if they live separately from business performance. So we're working toward that just to see what correlations might exist. And, feel free to stay tuned and see what we come up with in the coming months.
Looking forward to sharing the research and then making sure that we're sharing the research also in a way, as Sam mentioned, it's factoring in business performance. And then I'm sure as well, external factors too. It's not like we stay still as speaking of humanity, it's not like we stay stagnant. So we'll be looking forward to share those updates. Sam, you've been so gracious with your time. You've been a wonderful guest. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been wonderful meeting you and appreciate your time as well.
Thanks, Sam.
If you found value in today's episode, check us out on our website, CultivatedMarketer.com. You'll also be able to subscribe to us, rate us, and leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Remember, a garden of opportunity grows with Cultivated Marketer.